guys. So Brett here again with Salvage Lab's second episode of our weekly update. So just going to do a quick recap of the week, really. Give you some updates on what's happened in the market with Bitcoin and also with the global macro situation. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, just give me a second. So we're going to start off with the macro this week, actually. So last week we touched on the Federal Reserve and their balance sheet actually increasing, and how we said we weren't sure if it's just going to be a short trend where it's increasing here where they're supposed to be decreasing it, or if we're going to go down. So you can see in the last week they have offloaded some of their balance sheet, but when they're trying to get through 45 billion per month at a minimum, from the start of July to the end of July, they're pretty much back at break even, really. So they haven't really shifted too much off their balance sheet. So whether that changes coming up, we're not sure. So it's just going to be something that we're going to track as well. Okay, but what also has happened this week with the whole macro environment is the Fed did have their meeting and they did increase interest rates by 0.75%. So that means the Federal Reserve funding rate or funds rate is at between 2.25 and 2.5% now. So go back not too long ago, beginning of the year, that was sitting at 0. So we have gone up pretty rapidly considering they started the hikes in, was it March or April? So we've got quite an aggressive increase in interest rates. But what was touched on in the meeting is that it's going to slow down a little bit, that they considered around that 2.5% a neutral rate. So we've got what they consider a neutral rate now. So they do feel that should be able to bring inflation down. And we have seen prices in certain areas that will impact the inflation coming down as well, like your food, your gas, and other factors have come down a little bit as well. Other commodities that they've come down in price as well. So that should start to funnel through into the inflation rate. It doesn't mean that we're through the woods by any means, but it just means that we could have a little bit of a reprieve from inflation trending upwards in the next month or so. Cool. What else came up? We had some big companies report their earnings. Now, some of them came off under expectations, but a couple of the bigger ones like Apple actually were slightly ahead of expectations as well. So overall, even though there was a few misses, they weren't devastating. They were minor, nothing more than really 10% off, which I think is good for now. But I think I touched on it last week that I was expecting that these earnings weren't going to be so bad. It will be the ones at the end of Q3 that I expect will be a little bit more significantly impacted by the slowdown in the economy. So that's one that we want to keep an eye on. And that's why I was saying maybe around that September, October is where we do get either a retest of the lows of Bitcoin or we go to new lows. I do see potentially August maybe being a positive month as well, but we'll touch on that shortly as well. And then we have the GDP in America. It was officially what they classify as a technical recession now. So they've had 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. So that means the amount of money through the economy has decreased. So it's at a negative 0.9%. So it is a contraction. Okay, not as big as the first quarter, but in saying that some economists are actually forecasting a positive. So again, I think the market had already factored this in, but in saying that most of the pricing was in, but then people were a little bit uncertain at the beginning of the week, and that saw Bitcoin and other markets have a bit of a sell-off. People just being a bit cautious, and then at the back end of the week, we had a bit of a rally, which we'll touch on now. So here we are with Bitcoin. Okay, so starting on the monthly time frame, so there's pretty much 25 hours before we get the monthly close. And for this to turn around and be a red month, we'd need to close below 19,985. So it would take quite a big drop in the next 24 hours to get us under that. So yes, the volume's not as high as the previous 2 months, but you can see through this stretch, it's still relatively high. So there's been some good support in terms of the buyers in here. Whether that is them offloading as we rally, again, we're still not 100% sure on that. But for now, monthly to me looks like, the acceleration that we had through here has eased off. Whether we get maybe 1 or 2 months up before we go down again, that's quite possible. Okay. But for now, I think the selling pressure is definitely a lot less than it was through the previous 3 months, which is good. Now, let's zoom in a little bit on the weekly. And this is looking good as well. So we have what we call effort candles. So efforts are what it says essentially, like there's an effort to move the market up. Okay. And then the next candle shows you the result, really. So the result of this so far is that there is more upside to come potentially, as long as we close this weekly candle green as well. So there's an effort to move prices up through the volume, and this one being higher than the previous 3. Okay. And then the result, if this one closes green, is that, we can see more upside because there was buying pressure here. It wasn't selling pressure. And then we can use that example here. So the effort candle was to move the markets down, but the high volume and then the next candle closing green indicated that through this period here was people buying, and that was quite a contributing factor to the volume on that candle. Whereas you see here, the effort candle was down. The result, it was a successful result down, and then we had further downside. So you can see that these effort and results do show what the smart money is doing, or the larger money is doing in these instances. Come in on the daily. Okay, we put out a tweet and also shared to our Instagram, I think it was yesterday, that potentially Bitcoin has lost a little bit of steam here, and that we're looking at the 22,600 and the 21,800 levels. And that simply goes back to the effort versus result scenario we just touched on the larger time frame. So you look back here, very high volume, push up, okay, but we had no follow through on the next day. It did close red. You did have that large wick to the upside, right? And then we had this period here where we had 6 out of the 7 days were red, and we pushed back down to that 20,800 mark. Okay. And then we had this big push up back through. Okay, so you can see the same trend is sort of happening here. That's why I'm saying potentially look at these 2 levels. Okay, we'll see what happens here, and if it doesn't look good to me, then I'll probably look to buy at that $21,800 mark. Okay. Good thing is we've got a structure forming, so we've got lower or higher lows. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and then even if we come back to this level here, which I'll just extend it out, back to this level here, and then push up, we've got another higher low. We've got higher highs trending up as well. Okay, so we've got some structure forming, which is good. We had this breakout pattern and we came back in, but the good thing is we didn't push down here and break down to the downside. Within 2 days, we're back up, and we had quite a significant move up too. Okay, so it shows that there's a lot of buying pressure around here, but there's still some selling around here, and you can see that by the wicks pointing to the upside. Okay, but the more we push up here, ultimately, as long as we hold this structure, it could be that we break through this shortly, within the next week or so. And then we'll finish on the hourly time frame. Okay, so I've got a couple trend lines here that I'm looking at. So essentially, got a little range forming here as well. So we've got another ascending triangle. Like, yes, we did have that breakout, but we quickly came back into the pattern. I know there's a lot of lines coming on here, but just bear with me for a second. So this could be a bull flag because we've pushed up. Okay, yes, we pushed out, but we're back in here. Let me just come in a little bit closer. But you can see these two trend lines are converging, and yes, we did push down here quite low, down to the 20,500 or 23,500. But you can see that there's quite that sharp wick, and there's been some good buying up here. So we're still within a couple of structures here. So you could say this is a larger bull flag here, and then we've got a smaller bull flag forming in here. And then this third trend line is an even longer trend, okay, that we had from when we hit the lows during the week around that 20,800 mark. Okay. So we've got a few structures to look at on the smaller time frames here. This is probably what you'd use more for your trading if you wanted to get into some trading. But if you're looking to do a buy, to me personally, I'd hold off for now. Okay, like yes, on the shorter time frames, we've got these structures are holding, but on our daily, what we're looking at is if you can get a price. First, look at the 22,600, and if we're getting accelerating volume going down to there, I'd then look at that $21,800 mark for a buy. Okay, if it doesn't get down there, it's fine. We might end up buying around the prices we're at now, but if we push up and then come back down to around these levels, that's when we'd want to do the buy, because we would see that there's support forming there, and it's more of a confirmation buy. Whereas now, you know, there is potential that Bitcoin is ready to cool off a little bit and come back down. So you're buying at resistance here. So yes, it might go in your favor, but like statistically, you're not playing your odds very well. So we want to be smarter with our buys here. And then we'll wrap up the video looking at Ethereum. Okay. So Ethereum, we'll do the same. I'll go to my, I remember we used the other Ethereum chart last week, so I'll just find that one. Here we go. And we'll do exactly what we did last week, or what we did with Bitcoin as well. So looking at the monthly, so you can see how much stronger Ethereum is than Bitcoin. Like, I don't think we're going to surpass the volume on this prior month, but we're pretty close. And look how much closer we are to reversing that whole candle. So if we get a monthly closure next month above 1,940, that would be a really, really strong case for Ethereum. And we could be looking at higher targets than what we were talking about, that 2,100, 2,200. But that would need to have a monthly close, not just push up there and then close below it. A close above that would be such a strong signal. And it doesn't mean we'd rocket straight away. It's just it would just be a really strong indication that near the bottoms of this level is where smart money was really starting to load up. So something to keep an eye on. And then we'll slowly go down through the time frames. Okay, so like we touched on last week, Ethereum has had a really strong close, like closing above the level of this really, really high volume candle. And now we're getting the same thing here where we've got the effort versus result, right? So we've got effort to rise, it succeeded, effort to rise, and it looks like it could succeed again as long as we close above, where is it? 1597, okay? So again, we've got 25 hours before that weekly closes, so that's something to keep an eye on. If we get that follow through, it's looking good. Coming into the daily, okay, so same thing as Bitcoin. We had the effort here, it failed because the next day was red, and then we had a little bit, we didn't drop off as much as Bitcoin did, okay? It wasn't quite as much of a sell-off, but we still had that pullback, okay, from there to there, bit of a drop, and now we also had that same thing here. So we could easily test back down around this region here. So we could test back down to around 1488 over the next 3 or 4 days, okay, maybe up to a week. And again, that would be where I'd look to put in. Sorry, that's a pretty badly drawn line. I'd be looking to put in a buy around here. Okay, and if the good thing about doing a buy in here is if it drops and closes below this line, that I could easily just sell out there at a small loss and then look to enter in lower, because we'd be going lower, and then I'd preserve some capital there as well. So that would be a good place to put in the buy. And then we just zoom in on the hourly just to get see if we're doing a flag like we are on Bitcoin. So we got the longer term trend line flying through there, which we're quite far off of, and that is our daily trend line, sorry, that we just drew in there. But we do have our bull flag forming on ETH as well. Okay, so we've got our bull flag. We've bounced off the support. So we're either going to get a break up or a break down. Typically bull flags, hence the name, they do break to the upside more often than not, but it's not guaranteed. And then what you'd look to do is measure the flag pole. So it's about $106. Okay, and then let's say it broke out from here, $106 move. You could be looking at about 1840 ETH in terms of that as a minimum target. So just keep an eye on the markets. For now, I wouldn't be buying because there's potential on the higher time frames in terms of the daily time frames that we have had reached a point where we do need to cool off a little bit. So in terms of buying, hold off. If you want to do some short-term trading, if you have some trading experience, then potentially you could put in a little scalp trade here. But again, if you haven't had the experience trading, don't just do it now, because there's factors you need to take in consideration, like your risk profile and how much size you put into those trades as well. So if you have got that experience trading, potential couple setups with bull flags. If you're more of the investor, okay, Bitcoin, we're looking at 22,600 or 21,800 in terms of some buying areas. Okay, Ethereum, we're looking at around that 1,500 mark. Okay, as a buying area. So stay patient, because patience is key here. Because you can do, in terms of trading, you can do some buys, you can do sells, but there's a third trade option, which is sit on your hands, because that staying in dollars is a choice, and it is essentially a trade option as well. So that's where we are at now. It's been great bringing you this video. Just a quick piece of information. So we're going to keep these weekly market updates going, these videos, but within the next week or two, we're going to start bringing in some NFT videos as well. So stay tuned for that. I hope you got some good value out of this video, and I will catch you next week.